Imagine a guy who lives on a vertical wall for months just to make one single push a little higher. Would you risk everything for a strip of ice and stone that the world might only ever hear about in the whispers of niche forums? This is the story of a kid from Alaska who turned mountains into his lab, his testing ground, on the edge of what humans can handle. At what point does a love for heights stop being a sport and turn into a question of life and death? Let's rewind all the way back to his very first touch of cold rock. Tiny fingers, barely able to hold a grip, pressed against the icy granite of Alaska. He is 3 years old. This isn't a scene from a movie. This is the beginning of Balin Scott Miller's path. He is born on January 12th, 2002, in Anchorage, right in the heart of the wild. With him are his family, his father, David Miller, his mother, Janine Gerard Mormon, and his older brother, Dylan. It is his dad, David, who becomes his first guide into the vertical world. He does not wait for his son to grow up. He just takes him along, out to the seaside cliffs along the Seward Highway, that famous road that winds like a ribbon between the ocean and the mountains. For 3-year-old Balin, this is not training, it is play. The cold rocks, washed by salty spray, are his first wall. His hands and feet start learning to trust a surface shaped by nature itself. There are no plastic holds here, no soft mats. Just rock, his father, and the endless Alaskan sky. His whole childhood is soaked in this atmosphere. Anchorage gives him something millions of other kids never have: mountains and cliffs literally on his doorstep. For most people, it is just scenery, background for everyday life. For Balin, it is a giant natural playground, full of challenges and discoveries. And the key thing is, there is no family drama around it. No one tries to stop him. His obsession does not scare them. It becomes part of the family's DNA. This is their shared language, their way of being together. And that game, it starts to change. By the time he is 12, it is no longer just scrambling around on seaside rocks for fun. It turns into a passion, almost a job. Family outings become focused training sessions. The mountains stop being just a backdrop. They become his main teacher, his sparring partner. Balin starts seeing cliffs not as piles of stone, but as logical problems. Puzzles to be solved with strength, flexibility, and, more than anything, his mind. That is when a new element enters his life. Not just warm granite, but cold, ringing ice. Picture the sound, the tip of an ice tool biting into a frozen waterfall with a sharp crack. It is like a conversation with winter, where every single move has to be exact and deliberate. Those same lines along the Seward Highway that he explored in summer turn into vertical mirrors of ice in winter. And then comes Valdez, the mecca of ice climbing, a place that draws the best in the world. And there he is, this teenager, already climbing there, learning techniques that, to most people, seem completely insane. He learns to trust just 2 tiny points of contact, the tips of his tools, on a surface that is slick and unpredictable. And at the very same time, he is still just a regular kid going to school. He's sitting at a school desk, doing math and literature, but in his head he's already tracing a line up an ice wall. One world is the hush of the classroom, the other is the roar of the wind in a mountain gully. And somehow, he lives in both at the same time, without any visible effort. But even that is not enough for him. He joins the ski team at West Anchorage High. And this is not just a hobby, it is real, hard competition. Training sessions, brutal endurance races. Skiing teaches him how to breathe in freezing air, how to save his strength on long distances, and how to read the snow, which can be both an ally and an enemy. He's learning the language of winter in all its forms. And the wildest thing is this: through all those intense teenage years, there is not a single known serious accident in the mountains. Not one fall that puts a full stop on his story. That is not blind luck. That tells you something about his insane focus and a deep, almost instinctive sense of his limits. He does not take stupid risks. He is learning to read the mountains, to listen to the ice, to feel the rock like it is a living thing. By the time he finishes high school, Balin is no longer just a talented kid from Alaska. He is a kind of mountain universal soldier. In his toolkit, he has the technique of a rock climber, the bite and precision of an ice climber, and the endurance of a ski racer. He has stitched together all the elements you need to survive and succeed in the harshest environment on Earth. The foundation is set, and now he is ready to build something truly big on top of it. Diploma in his pocket, and in his eyes, a map of the world. For most of his classmates, this is the time to pick a college. For Balin, the choice is already made. His university is the mountains. He is not enrolling in lecture halls, he is stepping out onto the road. His routes now go far beyond his home in Alaska, down into Canada, into the so-called lower 48 states, and then even farther south, to South America, to the legendary spires and walls of Patagonia. And this is where a completely new chapter begins. He embraces a philosophy that seasoned climbers jokingly call Dirtbag life, the life of a wanderer who counts roots, not dollars, as their real wealth. His home, his base camp, and his vehicle all roll into one, a silver Prius. Picture it. This is not just a car. It is his personal spaceship for traveling around planet Earth. Inside, there is a sleeping bag, a little stove, gear, maps, and books. Every inch of space is optimized. He has learned to live with the bare minimum of stuff, to squeeze the maximum out of experience. But that kind of freedom has a price. Gas, food, a new rope, all of it costs money. To earn it, he dives into worlds that could not be farther from the shining alpine summits. Suddenly, our hero is standing on the deck of a fishing boat off the coast of Nome. The icy wind of the Bering Sea slashes his face. Working as a crab fisherman is monotonous, grinding physical labor at the limit of what a body can take. 12, 14, sometimes 16 hours a day. His hands are buzzing with fatigue, but his mind is fixed on one thing. Every crab hauled aboard, every dollar earned is a ticket back to the mountains. It is one more day on an expedition, one more chance to go higher. Then, a sharp change of scenery. He drops underground into a mine in southeastern Alaska. Down here, in the damp and the dark, he works the rock face and pulls out ore. This descent into the belly of the planet is the exact opposite of everything he dreams about. Peaks, sunlight, open sky. But in his head, it makes perfect sense. If you want to climb into the heavens, first you have to put in your time in hell. And his system works. A season of hard labor turns into a season of climbing. He shovels snow in Montana so that, with the money he saves, he can head south and take a shot at the walls of Yosemite. At some point, though, pure physical work just isn't enough. Trips to the far edges of the map demand a different kind of investment, and that's when people start to notice him. The American Alpine Club awards him grants from its climbing fund, not once, but several times. And that money is more than just cash. It's recognition. It's a vote of confidence from some of the most respected people in the climbing world. That grant feels like a ticket to the big leagues. It pays for flights, for helicopter drops of gear into base camps, for the kind of logistics you can't cover just by hauling crab pots or shoveling driveways. Balin has built a near-perfect loop for himself. Brutal work gives him money and toughens his mind, and the community's respect opens doors to his wildest dreams. He's no longer just a kid from Anchorage. He's a professional who has built a life where the mountains are not a hobby, but the core of his existence, paid for in sweat and sheer will. And now this finely tuned machine, where hard labor feeds big dreams, starts running at full power. His system, forged in storms and mines, finally bears fruit. And that fruit is made of pure, cold ice. A huge, almost vertical column of brittle, unpredictable crystal. This is the world of ice climbing. It's December of 2021, and we're in Keystone Canyon in Alaska. Balin is standing at the bottom, looking up at a route called Keystone Green Steps. In the climbing world, it's rated WI5. If you're not into ice climbing, that sounds like just another number. But for someone who is, it means a nearly vertical wall where every swing of the ice tools, every step of the crampons, has to be dialed in with surgical precision. Roughly 200 meters of ice, like trying to climb a 50-story building where the facade is alive, breathing, cracking, and ready to peel off at any moment. And he's going for it alone. Solo. That doesn't necessarily mean without a rope. He does have one. He builds his own anchors, manages his own belay, protects himself as he goes. But mentally, it's a completely different universe. There's no partner to shout encouragement from below. No second set of eyes to double-check your system. You're your own rescue team, your own emotional support, and your own judge. 4 pitches, 4 rope lengths of ice, and he climbs each one alone, one-on-one with the wall. This ascent is like a quiet but very confident conversation with the mountain, where he's proving, mainly to himself, that he's ready for something bigger. And then, just a month later, in January of 2022, that quiet conversation turns into a roar. The scene shifts to the Telluride area, and in front of him is the legendary Bridal Falls. Its grade is even higher, WI 5+. But that's not the most important part. He walks up to the base of this 120-meter ice giant, drops the rope, the harness, everything, right there on the ground, and then he starts climbing. No protection, no backup. From this point on, there isn't even room for the tiniest mistake. No safety net, no second chance. Every hold, every fraction of a movement is a decision that everything hangs on. From below, he's just a small dark dot on a massive white canvas. For anyone watching, it's the kind of sight that makes your heart stop. But for him, it's something completely different. It's a state of absolute focus, total immersion in the moment, in the ice, in the movement. It's the highest form of trust in his own skill. Those two climbs, done just a month apart, aren't just another couple of lines on his climbing resume. They're a statement, a turning point, a shift from being that talented, driven kid to being a master who's actually pushing the edges of what people think is possible. This isn't local training anymore. These are bold, chiseled messages, carved with ice tools into frozen walls, and the entire climbing world hears them. When you speak that loudly, the world starts to listen. And now, every step you take becomes an answer to the silent question. So what's next? Next comes the spring of 2022, and Balin raises the stakes in a way nobody really saw coming. He shifts his focus from the pure, almost distilled ice of frozen waterfalls to something much bigger, wilder, and way more unpredictable, to the Big Walls of Alaska. His new goal is a mountain with an almost mythical name, Mount Hunter, and the route is the Harvard on its north face. This is no longer a 120-meter sprint up a vertical sheet of ice. This is a marathon, 1,200 meters long. Picture not one, but 10 frozen waterfalls, stacked on top of each other, tangled up with rock and loose snow. In the Alaskan grading system, this route is rated grade 6. Behind that little number is not just difficulty, but total commitment and massive risk. It means you're stepping into a maze of ice and stone, where turning back might be harder than going on. And here comes a key twist. After those bold solo climbs, he's back on a rope team. His partner is Ethan Berglund. This is no longer a conversation with himself. It's a dialogue where every word, every move matters. Because on a wall like this, the price of a mistake is shared between two people, but it doesn't get any smaller. They climb in classic alpine style. What does that actually mean? Everything they need to live up there for several days, they carry on their backs. Tent, food, gear, all of it. No fixed camps waiting for them, no support team below. It's like heading out on a week-long backpacking trip, except your trail goes straight up, into thin air, where the weather can flip in a matter of minutes. It's his first truly big wall in Alaska. And he sends it. Success on the Harvard route isn't just another box ticked on a to-do list. It's his diploma, proof that he's ready for the top league of alpinism, for the hardest, most ambitious projects out there. Those ice solos were a statement about his technical mastery. And that climb on Hunter is proof of his endurance, his tactical thinking, and his ability to work in a team right at the edge of what humans can handle. From that moment on, Mount Hunter stops being just another peak for him. It becomes his personal reference point, his measuring stick, the place he knows he'll come back to when it is time to push the limits even further. The mountain does not really let him go. It is almost as if it looked back at him and said, "That was not bad, but you can do more." And then the mountain lets him go. But not for long. After the Grand Alaskan Orchestra, where everyone plays their own part, he needs silence again. He needs that one-on-one conversation with the elements, where there is no one extra, nothing unnecessary. It is December of 2022, and the stage for this dialogue is the Canadian Rockies. His eyes land on a frozen waterfall with a deceptively calm name, Whiteman Falls. But behind that name is an ice beast. Imagine a river that tried to hurl itself down a cliff a few hundred feet high, then suddenly froze halfway. That is Whiteman Falls. Experts give it a grade of WI5, and in a bad year, WI6. What does that actually mean for us? It means the ice here is not some solid, reliable wall. It is fragile, temperamental, and almost completely vertical. It can be thin like glass or soft and grainy like compressed snow. It is like trying to climb a giant frozen chandelier made of crystal. where every wrong swing of your tools can bring the whole thing crashing down. And there he is, standing at the base of this towering mass of ice, alone. No rope backup, no partner on the other end who can cheer him on or catch him if he slips. Just him, two ice tools, and the ringing silence of the canyon, broken only by the scrape of his crampons on the ice and the clear, precise strikes of his axes. Every swing, every step up, is not just a movement, it is a decision. Here, there is no right to make a mistake, no room for doubt. His entire world shrinks down to a few square centimeters of ice right in front of his face. This is not a test of muscles, this is a test of spirit, and he passes it. This climb on Whiteman Falls is not just another ascent. It is a statement. It is as if he is telling the entire climbing community, yes, my solo climbs are not a fluke. This is my choice. This is my path. He deliberately goes for hard, classic ice routes and does them in the purest, most committing way possible. It is like he is writing his own story, with ice tools on the face of the planet, and every line he draws is his signature. By the end of 2022, his name in the ice climbing world is no longer just something people bring up in conversation. It becomes shorthand for a bold, pure, and incredibly risky solo style on ice. After solos like this, it feels like he is just going to keep going in the same vein, raising the stakes in this one-on-one game with the elements. But mountains are not a stadium. Up there, the rules are written by altitude alone. And to play a truly big game, sometimes you need a partner. The year is 2023, and his eyes are locked on a line that keeps the world's strongest climbers up at night, the Andromeda strain on Mount Andromeda. This isn't just a frozen waterfall. It's an entire universe of ice, rock, and snow. A massive scar carved into the mountain, almost a kilometer tall. A legend of the Canadian Rockies. For a climb like this, he teams up with Adrian Costa, another bold and gifted alpinist. Now, there are two of them, and they choose the purest, fastest way to move in big mountains, the alpine style. That means everything they need is on their backs. No fixed camps waiting for them, no sections pre-rigged with ropes. Just you, your partner, and the mountain. It's a race into thin air, where every extra gram of gear and every extra hour on the face is working against you. They move fast, in sync, their ice tools and crampons ticking together like parts of a single machine. Meter by meter, they eat up the vertical, leaving rock bastions and frozen rivers behind them. It feels like everything is going their way. Then the mountain decides to edit their plans. High on the route, the one thing every climber dreads on big faces starts to roll in. Spin drift. Imagine not just a snowstorm, but a full-on river of fine ice particles, roaring down the wall at the speed of a train. This white curtain forces its way under your jacket, into your eyes, into your mouth, stealing your breath. It's not just annoying, it's dangerous. Under this endless white torrent, they finally reach the crux of the route, a feature called the hockey stick crack. They are literally one move away from committing to the final push toward the top, and this is where the mountain delivers a hard no. The snow pouring down becomes so thick that moving up would be like playing Russian roulette. They try to work around it. Hour after hour, they probe the wall, traversing right, then left, searching for any weakness, any safer line, just one passage that doesn't feel suicidal, nothing. The spindrift has turned the entire face into a roaring white trap, and this is where the most important thing happens. Standing on the threshold of their dream, after hundreds of meters of brutal effort, they make the call, they turn around, they start heading down. This is not failure. This is what real mastery in alpinism looks like, knowing when to back off, when the objective danger blows past any reasonable limit. That retreat off Andromeda shows what's really hiding behind the image of the lone, fearless climber, a cold, clear calculation and a deep respect for the mountains. He is willing to walk away from the summit now, so he has a chance to come back later. Backing off is not the end. It is a pause before the next attempt. The experience on Andromeda only hardens his character and sharpens his instincts. And later that same year, 2023, he teams up with Adrian Costa again, and this time, Aidan Whitlow joins their duo. Now they are three, and their new goal is one of Canada's most intimidating and iconic peaks, Mount Robson. Their route is called Infinite Patience. The name itself sounds like a warning, a promise that this climb will test not just muscle, but spirit. A wall more than 2 kilometers high, steep, complex, and with a mind of its own. Robson almost never lets anyone get close, and that's why people call it the Great White Fright. A team of 3 climbers goes for the boldest, most stripped-down style you can imagine. Picture this: 3 humans on a massive wall of ice, and between all of them, just one rope. One single rope. That is not just gear, it is their shared lifeline, a thin nylon cord that ties them together and separates them from the void. Climbing like this demands total trust and flawless technique, because there is literally no room for error. They move as one living organism, fast and synchronized. Step by step, swing by swing of the ice tools, they climb higher and higher. Now they are crossing the famous House Traverse, a sketchy horizontal section hanging over a dizzying drop. Watching them, it feels like their speed and rhythm could crush any wall on the planet. But Robson is not the kind of mountain you can just blitz. The weather starts to slide, and worse, the face itself is changing. The snow turns loose and powdery, like icing sugar. The ice goes thin and brittle, like window glass. In those conditions, finding a solid anchor is like hunting for a needle in a haystack. Every ice screw they place, every piton they hammer in, feels suspect. They realize the wall is turning into a vertical trap. Pushing on would mean ignoring the messages the mountain is sending. And once again, just like on Andromeda, the team makes the hardest but only sane choice. They turn around. The descent begins, and now their last trump card comes into play, something that only really works with this light, minimalist style, a device called the Beal Escaper. It is this clever little piece of kit, a kind of climber's magic trick that lets you pull your rope down and take all of it with you after you rappel, leaving nothing behind on the wall. It is a perfect match for their philosophy. They drop down the first section, then start pulling on the rope, and it jams. Completely. A dead snag. Their one and only lifeline is stuck somewhere above them, lost in the maze of ice. Trying to free it would mean climbing back up through steep, dangerous terrain, gambling everything. But being stranded halfway down a wall like this without a rope would be a disaster. In the freezing twilight, with time pressing in on them, they do the one thing that, for a climber, feels almost like an amputation. They pull out a knife and cut the rope. They save their lives, but the price is measured in meters of expensive gear, left up there on the mountain's icy altar as tribute to its harsh temper. They walk away from Robson minus a chunk of equipment, but carrying something much more valuable: experience. Experience that hardens into a simple, chilling truth. On a big mountain, your main form of protection is speed. Your reliance on ropes and hardware is also a kind of dependency. So, what if you cut that dependence down to the bare minimum? That thought will not let him go. And already in the fall of 2023, he turns it into a new, even bolder project. He is back in a team of 2, this time with Ethan Berglund, and their goal is a route called Slipstream, on a peak named Snow Dome, and they climb it in a style that sounds almost unreal. Picture 2 climbers tied together with a single short rope, and not a single piece of protection between them. They move up together like a single creature. If the climber below slips, the one above has to catch that jerk with his whole body, standing on bare ice. If the one on top falls, he rips his partner off with him. It's a dance on a knife edge where trust and timing have to be absolute. Their playground is almost a vertical kilometer of ice, 900 meters of frozen waterfall. But the main danger here is not the height, and not even the difficulty. Hanging over the entire route, like a giant guillotine, are seracs, massive, unstable blocks of ice that can collapse at any moment without warning. The only way to get through that zone is to move insanely fast. And that is exactly what they do. They blast through this whole frozen cascade in just 4 hours. 4 hours of pure, concentrated motion. The entire outing, from the car and back to the car, takes them 13 hours. This is not just mountaineering, this is a race against time, with the stakes as high as they get. And this experience seems to blow out all the fuses inside his head. If you can move that fast and that in sync with a partner, what are you capable of on your own? He answers that question with action. He solos a route called Kitty Hawk. That is already 5th grade ice. And then comes the moment of truth, the real proof of his status as an ice gladiator. He heads for the Stanley Headwall, a legendary cliff that holds some of the hardest ice climbs in Canada. His goal is Nemesis, 6th grade. At this level, it is not just steep ice anymore. It is often thin, hanging columns, suspended in space, fragile as crystal, and he climbs this route in full free solo style. No rope, no protection. Alone with the wall, where the price of a single mistake is absolute. This is his final exam in the world of ice climbing, and he passes it with the highest possible mark. In a short time, his resume fills up with new routes that sound like a dare. Come and get it. Sand Samurai. It is not just a list of climbs, it is a statement of intent, proof that he has found his style, fast, bold, and brutally honest. It feels like he has found his own language for talking to the mountains. And in January of 2025, he decides to speak to the one that has stayed silent for almost 40 years. His target is a route with a very telling name, the Reality Bath. What is that? Picture an ice bath that does more than just wake you up. It makes you rethink your entire life. That is what this route on the White Pyramid is like. It is like a ghost from the past. The first ascent was way back in 1988, and since then, you almost never hear its name. For decades, climbers have been steering clear of it, and not by accident. It is not just ice. It is ice under the constant breathing threat of enormous seracs hanging above. One wrong sound, one shift in temperature, and that ice guillotine starts to move. But that is not what scares our hero. If anything, he is drawn to the places where stories live. He digs up old reports where the first ascensionists describe what they went through, how scared they were, and he follows in their footsteps. He wants to feel the same thing, but on his own terms, alone. His ascent becomes the first solo climb in history of Reality Bath. He bites into the ice, moving fast and precise, knowing that time is his only ally under this white dragon sleeping above him. He is not just climbing, he is having a conversation with history, with his heroes. Names echo in his head, and one of them is louder than the rest. Mark Twight, a legend, the preacher of the fast and light style, the man who changed the rules. Many of the boldest lines he is now repeating were first opened by Twight. And that is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate choice. He is walking in the footsteps of titans. When he tops out, he does not celebrate. The job is not done. The descent is 6 rappels, 6 controlled drops into empty space, on a thin rope, back down into the safe world. He finishes the line cleanly, without a single mistake. Later, in an interview, he says something that sounds incredibly mature. A journalist asks him about risk, about his willingness to go all the way. And he calmly answers that he was not ready to die for this route, that if something had started to go wrong, he would have turned back. For him, this is not Russian roulette. It is the art of the possible. He is drawn not just to hard lines, but to lines with terrifying reputations, the ones people talk about in a whisper, the ones that make your heart clench already at the base. This is his way of touching greatness and of finding out what he himself is made of. And you might think he stopped to catch his breath, to enjoy his success after Reality Bath. Not even close. For him, one peak is just a step toward the next. Literally a few days later, in that same cold January, he is once again standing under an icy wall. His new goal sounds like an ironic sequel to the last one, virtual reality. But the ice here is very real. A grade of WI6 is not just a steep wall. Imagine a frozen waterfall, a vertical crystal chandelier where every tool strike can bring the whole structure crashing down. He climbs this route the same way as the previous one, alone. This is not a chase for fame. It is a test, a control measurement of his own strength and calm, after he looked his fear in the eye on the White Pyramid. It is like he is telling himself, yeah, I am in shape, I am ready. And this readiness is not for Canadian crags. His eyes have long since turned south, to where the sky meets the wildest mountains on the planet, Patagonia. And now he is there. The cold, biting Canadian ice gives way to warm granite, sharp as a razor. Instead of frozen waterfalls, there are giant stone spires punching through the clouds. His target is one of the true icons of alpinism, a mountain whose very name makes hearts beat faster. Fitzroy, or, as the locals call it, Yeroshal 10. He chooses the Californiana route, about 700 meters of almost vertical rock. This is a completely different kind of climbing. Here you need more than strength. You need strategy and the ability to manage the rope completely on your own. He hauls himself up to the ledge, fixes the rope, drops back down for his backpack, then climbs up the rope again. It's like shuttle runs, but vertical, where any mistake is your last. He's completely alone on this huge wall, and the only sounds are the wind and his own breathing. But even soloing Fitzroy isn't the end of his Patagonian Odyssey. This trip has one more peak waiting to be added to his resume: Cerro Torre, the legendary Impossible Needle, infamous for its brutal weather and insanely difficult routes. He never really says which line he took to the top. It's like he keeps that ascent for himself. A private conversation with the mountain, no spectators, no reporters. In just a few weeks, he's crossed 2 continents and climbed 3 iconic routes, all in totally different styles, and all of it alone. The climbing world, which had been watching him with curiosity, now looks at him with real admiration. He's no longer promising. He's the real deal. He stops being just a follower of the greats. He becomes a reference point himself. You'd think that after the warm granite spires of Patagonia, he'd want to rest. Maybe lie in the sun for a while. If you think that, you really don't know him at all. His Patagonian tan barely starts to fade before his eyes are back on snowy peaks. He returns to a place where he's already left his mark: Alaska, to a mountain that's become his personal challenge, an old, harsh conversation partner, Mount Hunter. But this time, he's not looking at the line he's already climbed. His focus is locked on the North Buttress, on a route whose name sounds elegant and dangerous at the same time: French Connection. This thin line of a route is like a full-spectrum exam for an alpinist. It doesn't let you relax for a second. Picture a staircase into the sky where the steps keep changing under your feet. One moment you're climbing on a thin, treacherous glaze of ice, where every swing of your tool has to be perfect to the millimeter. Then the ice gives way to mixed terrain, rock dusted with snow and frozen rime, where you're never really sure what you're holding on to. After that, you hit bare, frozen rock, where you need a completely different skill set. And all of this is on an almost vertical face, under Alaska's cutting, icy wind. And he goes up there alone. No partners, no backup from a rope mate, no one to talk things through with. Before him, nobody had ever soloed this line. Nobody at all. This isn't just an ascent, it's a statement. It's no longer about testing himself after a fall, like it was in Canada. It's about showing absolute control. He moves as if he's in his own private rhythm that no one else can quite access. Every step, every ice screw he twists in, every move on the rock, it all merges into a single, smooth melody. From the outside, it could easily look like madness. One person on a gigantic frozen wall, a tiny dot against the silent power of nature. But from the inside, from his point of view, it's the highest form of concentration. The whole world shrinks to a few meters of rope, to the sound of crampons scraping on stone, to his own breathing turning into a small cloud of vapor in the cold air. Topping out on the Harvard route was a loud statement. But soloing the French Connection? That was a signature, a master's flourish on his own canvas. He'd proved that his story with this mountain was only just beginning. Ace Hunter was now firmly his calling card in Alaska, the place where, again and again, he kept pushing the edge of what's possible. And now, when climbers say Hunter somewhere nearby, almost in a whisper, his name always follows. When your name becomes tied to a single mountain, you've got 2 options: sit back and enjoy the glory, or go find a bigger mountain. He, of course, chooses the second. Summer of 2025. He spends 53 days deep in the heart of the Alaska Range, almost 2 months living in a world where time isn't measured in hours, but in weather windows, where your only neighbor is the freezing wind. That season, he stands on the summit of Denali, the highest peak in North America, twice. The first time is by the classic line, the so-called West Buttress. For most climbers, that route is the dream of a lifetime. For him, it's just acclimatization, a warm-up, a reconnaissance mission. It's like he walks up to the giant through the front door, getting a feel for its moods and the altitude, before knocking on its darkest, most secret entrance. And that door is one of the most intimidating in world alpinism, the south face of Denali and its legendary line, the Slovak Direct. Picture a wall almost 3 kilometers high. That's like stacking 9 Eiffel Towers on top of each other. Only here there are no viewing platforms, no elevators, just a vertical frozen chaos of sheer rock, thin smears of ice, and snowfields waiting to avalanche at any second. A route that teams of 2 or 3 of the most experienced alpinists usually battle over for days, constantly fighting just to stay alive. And there he is, standing at the base, alone. with a single rope and a few days' worth of food. From the start of the wall to the summit, his ascent takes 56 hours. That doesn't sound like much time for such a monster, but here's the detail that breaks everyone's idea of how this is supposed to be done. The part that makes even seasoned climbers just shake their heads. Almost 70% of that time, he is resting. This isn't some insane all-out sprint to exhaustion. It's a precise, almost meditative chess game with the mountain. Short, hyper-focused bursts of climbing in those rare moments when the weather allows it. And then he stops. He literally lives on the wall, in a tiny tent hanging over a kilometer of empty air, waiting for the wind to die down or the snowfall to ease. He's not fighting the mountain. He's listening to it, moving in sync with its rhythm. And when he finally steps onto the summit, he becomes the first person in history to climb the Slovak direct solo all the way to the true highest point of Denali. After this ascent, the Alaska veterans, the people who've spent their whole lives in these mountains, look at him and say, "There's a new king of the range." From now on, his name stands right alongside the greatest legends ever to leave their tracks in this snow. What does the king of the ice mountains do when he steps down from his throne? He doesn't go looking for peace and quiet. He heads to California, to Yosemite Valley. It's a completely different universe. Instead of a silent white desert, it's a buzzing hive of tourists, rangers, and climbers from all over the world. It's an open-air stone theater, and its main stage is El Capitan, that same legendary granite wall every climber dreams about. And if in Alaska he was a hermit, here he becomes a local attraction, whether he likes it or not. His home on wheels is still the same, a modest silver Prius crammed with gear. But his real home, his base, hangs right at the foot of the giant wall. It's a bright orange portaledge, a hanging platform. Like a loud, ripe orange on gray granite, his camp is visible from anywhere in the valley. It becomes part of the landscape. And this is where the 21st century barges into the story. Some popular TikTok channel sets up a powerful telescope in the valley and starts streaming El Capitan around the clock. For thousands of people across the planet, hardcore big wall climbing suddenly turns into a reality show. They follow the tiny figures inching their way up, argue about their tactics, worry about them when something looks sketchy. And very soon, a regular star appears in the stream chat. You just can't miss him. Because of his bright little base camp, he gets a nickname, the guy in the orange tent. None of the viewers know his real name or what he's done in Alaska. To them, he's just this mysterious character who lives at the foot of the cliff and keeps heading back onto the wall. The funny thing is, for these thousands of anonymous spectators, he's just a bright dot on the stone. They have no idea that this guy has already stood on top of El Capitan more than once, by different insanely difficult routes. He's not here to prove anything to anyone. He's just living his life, and this wall is basically his backyard. And there's one more detail the telescope's camera is unlikely to pick up, but other climbers in the camp see it clearly. Before every serious climb, he paints 2 streaks of silver glitter across his cheekbones. It's not for show. When people ask, he just smirks and says it's his war paint, like a warrior before battle. For him, every wall is more than just a set of holes and cracks. It's a living being you have to talk to in a language of respect, power, and total commitment. And this glittering little ritual is his way of telling the wall, and first of all, himself, I am ready. But the season is coming to an end. The air in the valley gets sharper, the nights colder, and the endless stream of tourists starts to thin out. It feels like El Capitan itself is breathing a sigh of relief, shaking off the summer chaos. And in this growing quiet, our hero looks at the wall with different eyes, not as a home, but as unfinished business. His gaze is locked onto one single line on the smooth, forbidding southeast face. Its name sounds like a poem, Sea of Dreams. Only behind that beautiful name hides one of the harshest nightmares a climber can face. Sea of Dreams is not about graceful, athletic climbing. It's about cold calculation and nerves of steel. The route is rated A4. For most people, that's just some letters and a number. For a climber, it's a sentence. It means that for most of the way, you're hanging on gear that's basically held in by hope, tiny pedons hammered into hairline cracks, little pieces of protection balanced right on the edge of ripping out. It's like doing jewelry work on a sheer wall, where the smallest mistake isn't just a fall, it's a chance of losing everything. And he decides to climb this route in the hardest, most unforgiving style there is. Completely alone. That changes everything. Picture this. He climbs up, carefully placing gear and fixing the rope. Then he rappels all the way back down to haul up his entire load of equipment. After that, he ascends the rope back to where he was. Every single meter of the wall he covers 3 times. It's a slow, exhausting, lonely dance with gravity. No one hands him a rope. No one shouts encouragement. No one double-checks his system. He is the climber, the belayer, and the rescue team, all in one body. But this isn't recklessness. It's calculated. He already has several successful ascents of El Capitan behind him. He knows this wall. He feels its granite, understands its moods. Those past climbs aren't trophies on a shelf. They're the foundation his confidence stands on. He knows how to manage the heavy gear bag, that pig that always wants to drag you down. He knows what patience really means, when gaining a few meters can cost you an entire day. Sea of Dreams is the next logical step in his journey. From the icy faces of Alaska, where a mistake could kill you, to this vertical ocean of granite, where what's at stake is your willpower. This project turns into more than just a climb. It becomes his thesis on mastering loneliness and risk. Then October of 2025 arrives. For more than a month, he has been living on this vertical wall. His whole world has shrunk to a small patch of granite, the length of a rope, and whatever is inside that haul bag. The sun doesn't really warm him anymore. It just lights the stage. The cold Yosemite wind is his only constant conversation partner. By now, he's not moving on pure strength. He's running on stubbornness alone. Every hold, every micro crack, where he taps in a tiny piece of gear with surgical precision, is not just a step upward, it's an act of will. And then finally, the last hard section, the final exam of this long, solitary thesis. There is no room for being tired here. The air feels thin, his fingers are numb from cold and tension, but his mind is razor sharp. He checks every piece of protection twice, 3 times. He breathes slowly, saving whatever energy he has left. A move. One more. And then, his hand closes on a fixed bolt, the final anchor. 2 soft clicks of carabiners echo louder than any fireworks. He's safe. He did it. For the first time on this entire climb, he is clipped into the wall with absolute security. He's hanging just a few dozen meters below the rim of the cliff. He's not on the summit yet, but he's no longer truly on the route either. For the first time in many weeks, he lets himself look around. Beneath him is a void, sliced in half by the line of his rope. He can see his whole journey laid out. Every curve, every night spent on a hanging platform, every spot where his heart dropped into his boots. It is not just a view, it is a map of his own soul, of his stubborn will. The Sea of Dreams lies at his feet now, and it no longer feels hostile. He has crossed it. In terms of pure climbing, the wall is done. All the technical work, all the actual climbing, is behind him. But there is still one last enemy. Down below, at the end of the rope, hangs his faithful heavy companion, the pig, his haul bag. Inside is everything that has kept him alive, the last of his food, water, the portalage, the gear. And now this load, weighing almost 100 kilos, has to come up to him. This is the final, most thankless part of the job. It is no longer a graceful dance with the rock, no longer a mental puzzle. It is blunt, brutal labor, a monotonous tug of war with gravity. He rigs a hauling system, and centimeter by centimeter, jerk by jerk, he starts dragging his home upward. There is no more climbing unknowns ahead, just hours of exhausting mechanical work before that final step onto the summit. And right then, this last, almost humiliating chore turns into real drama. One pull, another. But the pig does not move. It is stuck, jammed hard somewhere below, behind a bulge in the wall, completely invisible from above. The fatigue he thought he had shaken off crashes back into him, now mixed with frustration. He is so close, but this wall, this damned El Capitan, is not going to let him go that easily. He has to go down. Just a few meters, just enough to nudge the bag free from the rock's grip. It is routine, a standard procedure. He reclips his carabiners, feeds the rope into his rappel device, and starts sliding down, back into the same abyss he has just conquered. Meter by meter, the wall glides past his eyes again. There is the hold where he hung yesterday. There is the crack where he spent an hour choosing the right piece of gear. His focus narrows down to that one goal below. Where is the bag? He drops lower and lower. The rope goes tight. Weird. He should be able to see it by now, but the haul bag is nowhere in sight. It is stuck much deeper than he thought. In his head, there is only one thing left: free the load, finish all this, and finally stand on solid ground. Inside that automatic, tired rhythm, one tiny but crucial climbing rule stays off stage: the knot. A simple stopper knot at the end of the rope that keeps the rappel device from sliding off. It is not there. In his mind, fogged by a month of struggle and exhaustion, the rope is endless. But it is not. He keeps descending, peering into the darkness below. Another meter, another half meter. The rope is feeding through the device far too smoothly, too freely. And in that instant, the realization hits. Cold, paralyzing awareness, landing too late for him to do anything. He feels the end of the rope slip through the metal. A soft click. His hands grab at nothing. The connection to the wall, to his protection, to the world, is gone. In one moment, he's the master of the wall. In the next, he's just an object obeying the law of gravity. All his struggle, 35 days of unimaginable persistence, gets erased in a single, endless second of free fall. He drops along the same wall that had been his home, past every camp, past every meter he'd suffered for. The abyss he'd been staring down for so long finally opens its arms and takes him in. A fall from almost 750 meters leaves no room for hope. On the 1st of October, 2025, just one step away from triumph, the greatest solo climber of his generation ends his journey on the floor of Yosemite Valley. For hundreds of people around the world, he was nothing more than a tiny dot on a monitor, a little figure inching up a gigantic gray face, watched through the glass of a powerful camera set up in the valley below. An independent stream that, for months, held people's attention, showing his life on the wall, his tiny hanging home. And then, live, that dot, that symbol of sheer determination, suddenly slips and disappears. For a heartbeat, the chat freezes in confusion, and then panic kicks in. Is this part of the plan? Did he drop something? But the dot doesn't come back. A sharp, icy stab hits the online community. Hundreds of anonymous viewers become witnesses to the final moment. Down in Yosemite Valley, the deafening silence of the mountains is broken almost immediately by a call to the ranger station. People watching through binoculars confirm everyone's worst fears. Soon, the search and rescue team, the elite of the Park Service, is gearing up. But everyone knows, this is no longer a rescue. This is a recovery. They move up a route they know by heart, but this time, their goal isn't the summit. It's a tragic mark on the wall. Their work is a dark, polished-to-automatic routine, stripped of emotion, ruled only by protocol. They find him. And they confirm what the rest of the world has already learned from the internet. The news rips through the climbing community like a shock wave. But people are not talking about his strength or his incredible line. They're talking about his final move, about the rappel, about the rope. How? How could the greatest master, a man who had mapped out thousands of moves on the hardest walls on Earth, make a beginner's mistake? Forums and blogs explode. Falling off the end of the rope is the nightmare that haunts anyone who's ever rappelled. It's the most basic rule they hammer into you on day one. Tie a knot in the end. Always. His story instantly turns into the harshest, most graphic lesson imaginable. A man who wrote entire poems on stone tripped over the first letter of the alphabet. And yet, once the initial shock settles, what remains is not the mistake, but the greatness. His name is etched into history not as a victim of El Capitan, but as one of its conquerors. The solo ascent of the Slovak direct on Denali, the first ascent of the bathtub of reality. These routes stand as monuments to his spirit, to his unbreakable will. He wasn't just an athlete, he was an artist, and the rock was his canvas. But by the end of 2025, there isn't a single major book about him, not one film. It's just too soon. The wound in the heart of mountaineering is still too fresh. The community grieves in silence, trying to grasp how closely pure genius can walk beside simple human exhaustion.